Good morning. Welcome to Saturday Morning Sewing with Shelancia. For those of you that do not know me, I started this awesome organization called the Creativity Shell, and our mission is to use creative trades to educate and inspire the next generation of makers. Our organization teaches classes like sewing, cooking, art, pottery, and all kinds of other creative mediums as a way to teach life skills, fundamental skills, and really focus on positive mental health. So, our Saturday morning sewing series is going to be teaching people how to sew. Every now and then, we might throw in some cooking projects and some other art projects. But for the next few weeks, I want to get everybody sewing. So today we are starting off with a very basic project. We are going to be making simple drawstring bags. I'm going to show you guys two different ways that we can make them. And if you have your materials and supplies, you need about 2 to 4 squares. It really takes 2 squares to make a drawstring bag, or if you want to make it lined, or if you have a long rectangle fabric like this. I have two of them here. This is also another way that we can make it. Or again, once you have your 2 squares, I will also show you how to connect the fabrics together to make this long rectangle for your drawstring bag. You'll need that and some ribbon and your sewing machine.
Let's begin. When I'm sewing, you will hear me use the terminology bright side and dull side. I don't like to use right side to right side because some students actually really like the dull side of the fabric, so I like to use bright side and dull side as my terminology. Let's take our 2 squares, and the objective is to sew them together to make a long rectangle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put bright sides to bright sides, and I'm going to just match them up by flipping one over the other and matching up my edges. What I want to do is I want to sew a straight line. I'm going to start from the top of the fabric, and I'm going to sew all the way down to the bottom.
So on your machine, you have this U-shaped button right here. Some machines have it as like a upside down or right side up U shape. It's just a U shape, and it's kind of a universal symbol on sewing machines that is your backstitch button. So before you begin, you want to lift up your presser foot, and you want to put your fabric just under the machine. You want to line up the width of the foot to the edge of your fabric. In another class, we'll get into seam allowances and everything like that. But for now, let's just practice using the width of our foot as our guidelines. And you put the fabric under, you lower your presser foot, okay? Your backstitch button, you will press it and backstitch 3 times. Some sewing machines, you might have to just press the button and it backstitches for you. Others, you will need to press your pedal and manually make it backstitch. So as you're sewing, you want to line up both of your fabrics so the edges touch each other. And once you've backstitched, you then will slowly go along and start sewing. You want to just sew a straight line. Okay, and some people do ask too, what is the best way for me to hold my fabrics? Sometimes I say put a flat palm against the fabric like here so you can guide it. And you really don't need to be forcing it through. The feed dogs under the machine here will continue feeding the fabric through for you. But on a small fabric like this, I really just want my hand there to act like a guide to my machine. When I get close to the edge, I'm going to stop and I'm going to backstitch that 3 times again and then lift up my presser foot and cut. Now, if your machine does not have an automatic thread cutter, you can also pull the fabric out, and there should be a razor at the back of your machine, kind of along the side around here. that will give you the opportunity to cut that thread. Once you have sewn that seam, your rectangles should be sewn together like this. If you have any loose threads, you can go ahead and just trim them off to get rid of them and clean it up. Okay. Next, we are going to do the channel for our drawstring. I do have a nice pinked edge here, but I'm going to show you guys how to do a hem and then a second hem, and we're going to iron across here so we have a nice finished hem for the channel for our drawstring. When you can finish your edges off like this, it makes any beginner sewer look like a professional. So I always recommend doing it because it just makes it, again, look fantastic. So this is after I've ironed it and I've ironed it down. One of the questions I just got is, how do I know kind of the width of how to iron it? This here is about an inch, and my first fold is about between like a half inch, I'd say. It's slightly uneven, but this is your first drawstring bag. So one of the things I do also want you guys to know is that it doesn't have to be perfect. This is how we practice, and if we focus so much on perfectionism, then we'll never get anything finished. So let's make our bag. And as you make many more, these are fantastic gifts for the holidays. You can add so many things to them. As you begin to make more, you can definitely work on your technique. You can use bigger fabrics, smaller fabrics to make this very same project. So I just ironed down this channel to secure it, and I'm going to put it back on my machine where I'm going to start sewing from this end, I'm going to go all the way down to this end. You do not necessarily have to backstitch this, but you should anyways, just because it's really good practice to remember to backstitch. Backstitching is like tying a knot into your fabrics, or sorry, into your threads, and it helps to secure it from unraveling at a later time. What I'm also going to do to save my step at the end of this project is I'm going to insert my drawstring at this time. I am going to tuck it in so the edge of it goes all the way back to this fold, and I'm going to leave my ends long enough so that I have a little bit of a tail once I am finished so that it will not unravel. I'm also just going to use a straight pin to pin that drawstring in so that it doesn't move when I'm sewing it. And this prevents me from having to feed this drawstring in once I am finished sewing. And as I get back on my machine, I want to sew close to the edge of this fold. I don't want to sew over here, otherwise my channel will not be complete. And I don't want to sew over here because I do not want to sew on top of my drawstring. I will lower my presser foot. I'm going to backstitch my 3 stitches, 2, 3, and then I am going to straight stitch all the way along the edge of this fold. Now you can see here my left hand is securing the fabric, and because it's a little bit longer, my right hand is also holding onto the fold. I also have not removed my pins from here, but if I find they're getting too close to me, I can just use my finger to secure the rest of this drawstring and finish my sewing. I get to the end, I'm going to backstitch again. So I'll show you guys how to manually cut your threads. When you do have your machine and you're finished, you want to release the needle from the fabric. If you have a manual cutter, you can pull the threads and you can either use your scissors to cut, or most machines will have a razor at the side that you can use to cut. I'm going to then also remove this pin, and my drawstring, I'm just going to check to make sure that I have not finished sewing it and it's moving. I haven't accidentally sewn on top of it. And then I'm going to fold this little baggie together, right sides to right sides. What I'm going to do now is just connect these 2 strings and just tie a little knot in here, just so that the drawstrings do not come out since they are loose in the channel. And my next step, I am going to start sewing from here. I'm going to do a back stitch. You don't want to sew all the way up because you don't want to block your drawstrings. I'm going to go down to this corner. I'm going to show you how to pivot, and then you are going to pivot your machine, your fabrics, and go all the way down to the edge. And that is your drawstring bag. You will be finished sewing after this point. So you have your fabric on your machine using the width of your foot as your guideline. We are going to lower our presser foot and we are going to backstitch. Just be careful when you're backstitching because you don't want to backstitch over this ribbon right here. And you are going to sew a straight stitch. So you get to this corner. You want to stop a good like 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch before the edge, and especially if these fabrics have become uneven. So how to pivot, okay? You lift your presser foot, you turn your fabric 90 degrees counterclockwise, and you lower your presser foot and you start going. Now you're going to notice here that I have a little bit of just extra fabric here. My width of my foot is no longer my seam allowance. That is completely okay. I can cut this off because what can happen sometimes, and I want to show you, is if for any reason these two fabrics become uneven, you want to make sure that you just have enough fabric in here so that when you do sew this seam to close it up, that you do not have a hole in there. And you just keep going straight across. Here, you get to the end and we backstitch our 3 times and we are good to go. Once you get to the end here, before you turn it over to the bright side, you can just go ahead and just clip any excess threads that you might have left over from your project. And now for the big reveal. Voila! You made a drawstring bag. So this is another quick and easy way that you can also do a simple drawstring bag. The difference between the first drawstring bag and this one is one, I'm using a full rectangle here. If you had 2 squares, you can always go back and do the very first step we did in the last project and connect them to make a large rectangle. This drawstring bag that we are making, I am actually going to make it lined. This way it will have an inside and an outside fabric and vice versa, okay? So again, if you have 2 squares, connect them together first, and 2 squares, connect them together to make a rectangle. So I need 2 rectangles for this project, and I'm going to place my fabrics together, bright sides to bright sides. The first step I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a straight line all across here. I'm going to start from here, go here, and finish here, and then I am going to backstitch. Again, when I begin, I will place the fabric under my machine. I will lower my presser foot. I'm going to backstitch 3 times and then do a straight stitch all the way down using the width of my foot. Again, when this fabric is longer, your left hand is on the machine and it is guiding it all the way through. And your right hand kind of acts like it's just going to be steering this machine, so it's going nice and straight for you. When you get to the end, you stop and you backstitch 3 times to secure your stitch. You release your threads and lift up your presser foot, and you're good to go for step 1. So at this point, you now have 2 long rectangles that are together, okay? Now the major difference that you're doing between this drawstring bag and your other drawstring bag is that you are making this project lined. It's going to seem a little bit tricky at first, but no, do not worry, it is going to all work out. So once I'm at this step, I'm going to turn this over to the bright side. and I'm going to fold my fabric in half like this. Okay. We are going to sew starting up here and go to this point. We're going to pivot. We're going to go right here, and about 3/4 inches before we get to the seam line, we're going to stop, disconnect our threads, start again sewing here, go down, pivot, and all the way across, leaving this seam open. That part will be left open for two things. One, it will help us to turn this fabric over to the bright side. And two, it will be the channel for our drawstring. And once we get on our machine, we will first just kind of even out your fabrics as best as you can. Okay, you will lower your presser foot. You will backstitch your 3 times. And then you will straight stitch, going straight across. Sorry, I won't try to go too fast on you guys. Okay, we get to our corner, needle in fabric. We lift up our presser foot, 90-degree turn counterclockwise, lower the presser foot, and start yet again. Now again, my seam allowance now is no longer right at my halfway point. I just want to show you guys, if anything ever happens and your fabrics start to separate a little bit, as you're starting out, just make sure that you have enough space that you don't have any holes in your bag. Once you turn it over, you will barely notice it. And that's one of the things that when we're working with personalities who are very much perfectionist, you will take it out and do it over and do it over again. For this project, I just want you guys to practice. So I've reached my stopping point. I'm going to release my threads, lift up my presser foot, and I have a little bit of a break right here. I'm going to start again about the same distance in. We'll lower our presser foot. I'm going to backstitch my 3 times. Okay, and then I'm going to straight stitch down, across, down to the bottom. I'm going to stop, lift my presser foot and pivot, 90-degree turn counterclockwise, fabrics down. You see here again, it is not the same. And I want you guys to really get into the habit of just letting that go, especially as you're starting out, because your objective is to finish this project, gain your confidence, gain your self-esteem. So when you work on other projects, you can work on your perfectionism. So I will release my threads and lift up my presser foot. I am at this point here, and this opening part, I'm going to just use it to turn this little lined drawstring bag over to my bright side. Okay, and now you're like, wait, I really just sewed a giant tube. It is not quite just a giant tube just yet. Well, it is. It's a giant tube. Maybe it's just not quite your drawstring bag just yet, but we are almost there. We are almost there. You'll see this come together. I'm just basically poking my edges out, and I'm probably just going to go give this a really quick iron so that my fabric does not look as wrinkled as it does right now. Now that it is ironed and smoothed out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bag and put one inside the other, which creates my lining. Almost there. So here, if you wanted to and just finish at this point, you technically could just insert your drawstring, but I'm going to show you guys just one more step on how we can create a well-defined channel that will hold our drawstring in place. So I just had to do a quick machine switcheroo here, just because my bag was a little bit too small for my other machine. But the first thing you want to do to sew this is you want to remove the arm from your machine. And then basically you place your drawstring bag over this arm here. You want to just make sure that your width is wide enough for it to go around. That's why it's better to kind of use a bigger square when you are sewing this for the first time. and you want to lower your presser foot. You want to give yourself a good, there's the width of your foot plus an extra inch. I'm on this like 2 marker over here, closer to, actually, sorry, it is more my 7/8 of an inch marker on this guideline here. You want to give yourself a good, probably an inch or so room so that you have enough room to use a safety pin to insert your ribbon through the drawstring. As you are sewing, okay, you want to just go all the way around using this as your guideline to sew. When you get back to your beginning point, I'm just going to connect these two and back stitch a little bit just to reinforce my seam, and you are good to go. You want to pull your threads out, and again, if your machine has the cutting at the side, you can use this edge here to cut. So now that your channel has been sewn, you can clip these excess threads, being very careful not to clip into your fabric. You have a gorgeous little channel. You want to get your ribbon and connect. I use a safety pin for these. I just think that it is sometimes the most universal tool. And you put that safety pin through the hole, and you basically push your pin, pull the fabric, push your pin, pull the fabric, push your pin, pull the fabric, get that all the way around until it emerges from the other side. If you have a little bit of a fold in there, it might get kind of tricky. Reach your hand in, and there you go. You can cut your drawstring at its desired length and remove the safety pin. Remember, tie these two loose ends together. Like that. And you have a second drawstring, but this one is fully lined, so you can use it on either side. So thank you guys so much for sewing with me this morning. If you have any questions about your machines or anything like that, drop it in the comments. We will do our best throughout the week to respond to them. And if you are a member of our Creativity Crew Club, you can, if you're not a member of the Creativity Crew Club, it's an awesome club that we have, and you can download a lot of these patterns for free online. If you go to our website, www.creativityshell.org, you will see some information there on how to join. It also will give you access to our Kitchen Connection series, which begins next Saturday. Patterns will be online on Monday for you to download for free, or you can purchase them if you're not a member of the club. And we will see you guys next Saturday. Thank you so much for sewing with me, and hope you guys spend the rest of the week making some more of these adorable little drawstring bags.